Oh dear, that wasn't the start I wanted. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning. It is Tuesday, the 15th of April. Good morning here with Reganelite. 8 a.m. nice and early in the morning. How are you guys doing? Have you woken up yet? Some of you have. Some of you may be half asleep listening to this. It's totally all right. It's totally all right. Hope you guys are all doing well. Hope you had a good Monday. We still got a couple more days before we get to the weekend, guys. So stick with me. We'll get through it. We'll get through it. Just want to let you guys know, any super chats today goes towards the Democratic Penguins Republic. If you guys did not see the video last night on the Snowflake Viewpoint, I'm afraid you missed out on that one. But if you would, any super chats goes towards them and the cause that they are doing in the fight against Donald Trump and his US tariffs for the Penguins. So just wanted to put that out there. So any super chats, funds goes towards them and their cause. The weather today is 10 degrees here in London, where I am living. It is miserable at the moment. It's a bit wet. Give me 1 second. I was sorry. Needed to clear my throat. Don't know where that came from. Sometimes, like, I'm like talking, and all of a sudden, it just comes out of nowhere. You know, it just comes out of nowhere, and it's just a reminder that I still have something. And I just realised that my chair was caught on a wire there. Not good. So back to the weather report. 10 degrees. It's been raining mostly morning. It's still raining now. The weather says it will clear up in the next hour here in London, and they're forecasting for the rest of the day to be cloudy. It is pretty cloudy out there, to be fair. So I wanted to go for a bike ride today. I might not do that. I may do. I may not. I might just do at least a 10-minute ride, because I was told that because the last time I went on a bike ride, it didn't go very well. So I might go for a little short ride around the block, just to kind of get my feels to it. And if the rain clears up a little bit, then I'll do that there. So yeah, it is pretty miserable morning here in London. Let me know what the weather's like where you are, guys. Good evening, Steve McMahon over on the other side of the world. Hope you're doing well. Today's quote, guys, it is the 15th of April. An interesting one here from the Daily Quota. Remember, if you guys want to know if I'm not here and you guys want to know what the Daily Quota is, follow me across my other social medias. If I click it on the links tree down below, you can find me on all sorts of different social medias. You can find out, I normally post them across all my socials there. But this is today's one on the 15th of April. This is by Annette Kelly. It's a quota here. Free yourself from suffering. You deserve happiness and peace. Life may not be perfect, but it is. That doesn't make sense. That's because I'm not reading it properly. Regan, do it again. I'm going to start this again. This is not the rest of the starts, that's for sure. Free yourself from suffering. You deserve happiness and peace. Life may not be perfect, but it has perfect little moments that make it all worthwhile. There, I think I got it there. There, that's the 15th of April. What is the 16th? Just out of curiosity. Interesting one for the 16th there, guys. So you'll have to wait. Till tomorrow for that one. There, we got a tropical cyclone building up on the Pacific off the west coast. There. Oh dear. Well, oh dear. Well, I hope everyone takes necessary precautions, Steve, from that. I really, really do. I do have my hot drink with me, guys. As always, honey and lemon. Can't go wrong with honey and lemon, of course. Now, before we get into the news, there's quite a bit of news here. Like today's Good Morning is actually a world news one, so I've got So we're looking at some of the news from the world news outlet today, guys. So it'll be a bit different to the UK one. We'll go back to UK stuff tomorrow, and we'll see what the media in the UK are talking about then. Because sometimes, yeah, there's always the same news that's from the day before. So I think it's nice to switch it up. And by the way, if there's any media outlet specifically that I haven't covered that you want me to cover on the webpage and that, throw them down in the live chat and I'll make a note of it. And maybe we'll do like we could do maybe in the future we could do one Good Morning show where we could do like viewers choice medias to look at. So like if I could do like a list of media outlets, websites that you guys want me specifically to look at, and we can look at together for one Good Morning Show. We could do something like that potentially as well. Bit of more interaction for you guys as well. So let me know what you some suggestions down below. I'll give you some of the ones that we're going to be looking at today, depending on how this hour goes. So we're going to be looking at CNN, Al Jazeera, African News, Associated Press, Kiev Independent, Reuters, and the New York Times as well. I've got all of them up for us. Oh, I do have Euronews as well. Although the problem is that I got half the cut off is because they want me to accept cookies, which I really don't want to accept their cookies. I mean, I like cookies, just not their cookies, if you know what I mean. There. So, before we get into some of the news, which I've got here to talk about, guys, I want to talk a little bit about like something that really kind of got my attention yesterday. So yesterday, I don't know how many of you were watching the Two Davies show, which was at 2 p.m. yesterday, and I was listening to David Mulligan's general frustration over what's been happening with the situation, that things are not in control, and the desperation for independence, and the feeling that people are not talking about it, and that not enough's being done about it. And so subsequently, whether you agree or disagree, he left the show, leaving Dave McGuinness to finish the show. And why am I talking about this here? Well, I wanted to talk a little bit. I wanted to touch a little bit on it because I want to speak on this from a perspective from somebody who's from England. Now, I don't know if he'll ever watch this, and if he does, that's great. But if he doesn't, it's totally understandable as well. But I wanted to talk to Scottish viewers who feel what David is feeling, and I want you guys to know that I completely understand the frustration, the anger, and the fact that you feel a sense of no power over the situation that is happening with regards to Scotland. The fact that everything is being controlled by Westminster. The fact that you can't have another say on an independence referendum. It is very frustrating, especially what's happening right now. But there is also an unfortunate reality that has to dwell in, and that is, and this is somebody coming from the outside as well, is that unless there's enough marchiness, unless there's enough people talking about it, unless there's enough pressure on politicians, you can't change the situation just by yourself. And this kind of goes along the lines of the Green Party, which is something I don't know if I'll talk about it here. I might talk about it in another episode, another Good Morning Show. The frustration I feel from David is that he feels like I'm trying to understand, like a part of him feels like nobody's listening to him, like nobody is grasping the need that we need to push more for independence. But the reality is that there's not enough Scottish people who want to push for it. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong at all by what I say in the chat from anyone from Scotland here, because I think that given that everything that has been happening lately, given what's been happening with regards to America, the general election that happened last year, the UK general election, the US election, what's happening with Donald Trump and the tariffs, there's a sense I feel that many people have been burnt out by politics. Many people have been frustrated by it, and it switched them off. A lot of people switched off politics after the US elections. Many people felt despondent and displacement, and people just didn't want to talk about it. Didn't want nothing to have discussions about it. And maybe that's what some Scottish people have after the US election as well. Like yes, they're still for independence, but they just want to get on with their lives because they feel like it's a long way away. And I said in the chat there at the time, I said hearts and minds, because it's all well and good having a show and talking about it with the people that you have, and when you've got whether it's 20 people or 10 people or 5 people like I have now, or even if it is 100 people or 1,000 people in your chat, that's not going to change what's happening in the country. That's not going to change the feeling. That's not going to change. That's not going to change anything. Yes, you have a YouTube channel, you have a campaign. That's all well and good. But you've got to physically get out there and campaign. You've got to be continuously to have these conversations. You've got to be willing to do that, and you've got to basically get out the door, because talking about it on a computer screen and mentioning it every single day is not gonna change the situation. Sadly, I hate to be the brutal honesty here, and he's right. The SNP are not talking about independence, because it's not something on the subjects of it's not something that John Sweeney and the SNP, like, they are still for independence, but it's kind of hurting them in a weird sort of way, because it's not really something on the minds of the Scottish people. You know, their priorities is just, you know, job security, the cost of living crisis, healthcare, you know, the basic things. And yes, there of course there is an argument for independence, and that needs to be discussion that needs to be had. But I understand his frustrations, but I don't think it's right. I understand his frustrations, but he's aiming his frustration at Dave McGuinness, which is wrong. And I'm sure all my Scottish friends who are watching feel his frustration, feel his upset and anger over the fact that independence has not been talked about enough. We totally, you know, I understand that. I really, really understand the frustration. It's just the reality is, it's not something that people want to talk about. Well, you've got to make it the conversation. And the only way you make that conversation is not just talking about it here on the computer screen. It's actually going out the door and having those conversations with people and saying to people, if we were independents, this wouldn't be happening. If we were independents, this wouldn't be happening. And then you break it down to people. Got to have these meetings. Got to keep having these discussions with people. It's not just doing it within your little bubble on that. So I do hope David, you know, the two Davies have a private talk, and it comes, you know, and he understands point of view, because I'm sure we all understand his frustration on how important for Scotland it is to fight for their independence, fight for their rights, to be able to have their say, decide their own futures, control their own budget, to have politicians not being influenced by and not having to be chained by Westminster all the time. So I totally understand that. Sorry, Stephen One. I wanted to get that off before you sent that super chat. Thank you so much for the $5 New Zealand dollars. I much appreciate it, my friend. Very kind of you. Good morning, Stephen Banker, Alistair Keir. Good to see you guys. I think a lot of people feel anxious and overwhelmed. There's so much happening every day. It's consistent bombardment of bad news. People have to screen it out from time to time. It is a lot of negative news. It is a lot of negative news. It is very overwhelming. I mean, literally yesterday we're covering UK news, and someone brought in the chat, I think it was Roger Devine, was bringing up about Trump talking about deporting US citizens from US citizens, which is just insane. It's just insane, and we'll actually might as well talk about that story now, because it's literally, because we are going to be talking about world news. You know, from the Associated Press, Trump says he wants to imprison US citizens in El Salvador. That's likely illegal. It actually violates three different parts of the Constitution. From what I read, I think from one tweet I said it said the 4th, the 5th, and the 8th part of the Constitution. This premise that you can. Oh sugar, what's happened? Oh no, I haven't lost the feed, have I? Are we still live? Hold on. Jack, can you let me know if we're live still? A screen just went off. don't know if I'm still live now. Why does it do that? We're still here. Why did this? I don't know why the computer's doing that. Sorry, guys. Yeah, for some reason. Okay. Thank you, guys. Yeah, for some reason, my window screen just switched there. That was very weird. Good morning, DJ Marnimu. Hope you're doing well. Alistair Keir, coming back to what I was just saying, to be fair, it's like him and your parents arguing, but I can see both sides to it. Yeah, it is. It's frustration from Mulligan. Yeah, it is frustration from him. And he's right to be frustrated. He's absolutely right to feel his frustration when he feels like nothing is in control. So, totally understand that. Yeah, so let's go back to the news, guys. So, Donald Trump saying he wants to imprison US citizens in El Salvador. Yeah, at the moment, it's a lot of rhetoric, but it's just rhetoric at the moment. But that's the path they want to go down. Basically, anyone that defies this Trump administration, anyone who says anything bad about them, this is the path you'll go down. It's very, very scary. You really have to be careful treading where you're treading in America now. Now, to be clear, when he did talk about this, he talked about the most vile criminal scums in the United States. He did make that. He wasn't. But who is to say that when it will start talking about people who are politically against him as well? When does that line get drawn there? That's for me. It's so wrong on so many levels. Like I really do fear for U.S. citizens. I fear for non-U.S. citizens in living in the United States when they're just living their lives like ordinary people, and they could just find themselves being sent there for no reason. I'm very, very much concerned about Americans right now. You know, Donald Trump saying these things, and it's quite sickening as well, because also the El Salvador president who visited Washington as well, he says that he won't be returning a mistakenly deported man to the United States as well. So we are basically in a constitutional crisis in the United States now, because the Supreme Court has called for it. The highest court in the United States that has disposed the same judicial powers as the president and the Congress, and then they're basically refusing to do it. That's basically they're refusing to do it. So what happens now? What is the judges going to do? What's the Supreme Court going to do? It's literally a case of it's now at a point where who are you backing? The president or the Constitution? It's very, very scary now, because this is the situation they're in. They've been ordered to return this man. Well, the president of El Salvador said, I'm not returning him. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, in his mind, it's like it doesn't matter, because he's not being ordered by the Trump administration to return him, so he's not going to return him. And it's not in America's jurisdiction, it's in El Salvador's jurisdiction. So, an innocent man has been sent there. Innocent, completely innocent, done nothing wrong. And they've tried so hard to smear this. My only hope, my only hope is that somehow in the future, between now and the future, he doesn't die. And that somehow, some way, he ends up being returned after several years. That is my only hope. Because as of right now, I can't see him being returned. There needs to be pressure applied on Republicans. Needs to be applied. They need to apply pressure onto Republicans as much as possibly can. So for anyone in America, if I'm in a red state, you need to apply pressure to the Republicans as much as possible. Need to continue to crank up the pressure on this Trump administration. They have backed down on things. This Trump administration has backed down on things. So if enough pressure is applied, they could be forced to bring him back. They could do. But as of right now, they have no intention of doing so, guys. One other story that has hit the news as well is a major blow to... yes, there was. We don't know for sure, but yeah. The problem is we honestly don't know what's going on in the prisons in El Salvador. But yes, Al-Zakir, there is that rumor. I mean, it's just yeah. There's just on so many levels. It's just we just don't know. Well, all we can do is just hope that the Trump administration gets him out and continue the pressure. The two Davies have argued before, but they've always made up. Yeah, but my point is obviously it's just because of because he walked out on it. Like they've had arguments, yes, of course, but I've never seen it go that far, and it is frustrating. It's frustrating because obviously like I said, Mulligan's frustrated because he feels powerless. That's how he generally feels about about what's happening in Scotland. He feels powerless, and you guys agree. It's frustrating, but you have to. But the best way to push for independence is keep talking about it, keep having those conversations, not just here in the chats, but when you go to work, when you go to the shops, when you're chatting with friends and family and whatnot. Keep bringing it up the benefits. Whenever politics gets brought up, whenever you're having discourse, bring up. If we were independent, just add it to the conversation. Keep having the conversations. That's the best thing to do, guys. Just keep having the conversations. It's not just about applying pressure to politicians. Get people talking about it. Because right now people are not talking about it as much as they want to. That's why you need to get people talking about it. From the ground up, not just about on the politicians, but from the ground up, guys. Good morning, Ginger Lefty. Hope you are doing well. And anybody else who are lurking in the chats. Who's making the coffee? Pingu's making the coffee. Pingu's making the coffee at the moment. So one of the other stories, guys, one of the other big stories happened on Monday was in Hungary. Terrible story in Hungary, guys. If Hungary has passed a constitutional amendment to ban LGBTQ plus public events. So people's rights are being taken away even more in Hungary. We know Viktor Orbán is becoming increasingly unpopular in the country, and they are going towards more of an authoritarianism, populist government, even more than ever before Hungary. There has been obviously talks about whether or not they should be kicked out of the European Union, but I don't agree with that. I do think they should be kept within the European Union and just be made, life be made a living hell for them in the European Union. I think that's the best way to do it, not kick them out. But yeah, the direction that Hungary is going is very concerning, even more than ever before. And I think it was earlier this year or late last year, they had a parade, the LGBTQ plus community, a pride parade in Hungary, and there's the fact that this has come through, that this has happened is it's worrying time there. I'll just point out that the amendment, which requires a 2/3 vote, passed along party lines with 140 votes for and 21 against. It was proposed by the ruling Friskis KDMP coalition, led by the populist Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. The amendment declares that children's right to moral, physical, and spiritual development supersedes any rights other to than the right to life, including that to peacefully assemble. Hungary constitutes child protection legalization, prohibits the description or promotion of homosexuality to minors aged under 18. So you're not allowed to talk about homosexuality in any way, shape, or form to children, basically, in Hungary. The amendment codifies a law fast-tracked through Parliament in March that bans public events held by LGBTQ plus communities, including the popular Pride event in Budapest that drew thousands annually. The law also allows authorities to use facial recognition tools to identify people who attend prohibited events, such as the Budapest Pride. It can come up to fines of up to 200,000 Hungarian forints. That's literally $546 for reference there. So Hungary going further and further away, very, very scary indeed. I'm actually going to start crossing these out so I can remember what were the stories. One other stories that's been talked, obviously continuation story, of course, is what's happening in the Middle East within Gaza, guys. The latest news from Al Jazeera is that Hamas are studying Israeli ceasefire proposal, and their demands to disarm is considered a red line. I don't expect Hamas in any way, shape, or forms to agree to these ceasefire proposals, despite the fact that the Palestinian people are suffering immensely right now. Hamas has said that Israel's ceasefire proposal demand the Palestinian groups disarm crosses a million red line. Yeah, I mean, where is like, there's like, for them, after everything that they have done, and everything that they have done, and what they have been through, Hamas, they're not going to appeal to this. They may get some pressure from Palestinian people, but I don't expect Hamas to accept this proposal. I don't think they do. But this is one of the newest stories that's come out today from them. But I'll try to cover some more news on this. I have got some Rumble videos dropping with regards to Middle East the next couple of days. I'll try and get some more out today. Try to record some more today, guys. Talk about taking your country backwards, says Stephen Banker. Yeah, just what Thatcher did in the 1980s, Section 28. I remember rightly, says Alistair Keir. Yeah. Another, obviously, story that continues the suffering, of course, is in Africa. We may talk about it later on the Snowflake Corner. The World Food Programme warns of hunger crisis and asking for more funding. That's from African News with regards to the Sudan crisis, civil war at the moment. Still, at the time of this recording, there's still no talks of any kind of ceasefire, and as we know, many people are suffering. There has been reports of some horrific atrocities being occurred by both sides of this conflict as well, and many of the aid people struggle to get food and medicine and essentials to Sudanese in there because of fear of their own safety. They're not guaranteed their own safety within the country as well. So that's situation, unfortunately, is still carrying on, guys. May talk more about that later on the Snowflake Corner. Talked about, I'm just going through my list here of things. We talked about Trump already in El Salvador. The Kiev Independent, every morning on the Kiev Independent, they report the number of troops that Russia has lost. This is what the numbers that they normally have. So on their numbers they have today, the General Staff reported that Russia has lost 935,160 troops in Ukraine since the start of the war. So according to the General Staff, nearly a million. So about 70, just below 70. So about 70,000 roughly troops away from reaching 1 million deaths in Russia. Now, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if they're adding North Korean troops to that number or not, because it doesn't state that. But even so, even before the reports of North Korean troops supporting Russia in this war, there was still already up to 600, 700,000 that they were being reported anyway. I don't know if that number is legitimate or not, but we do know that many Russians have just been thrown into the meat grinder in this conflict. There was over the weekend a terrible attack which killed Ukrainian children, and Donald Trump didn't criticize Russia again, and he said it was a terrible accident, a tragedy that it happened, and is trying to blame Zelensky and Joe Biden for what's happening in this war, which is nonsense, because Russia are the ones who invaded, and I don't know how many times we need to tell people that that Russia started this war. Russia annexed Crimea in 2014. Like, you didn't say anything during your time, Mr. President Trump, about demanding Russia give back territory that wasn't theirs. Yeah, it's every day more lives are being lost. More lives are being lost in Ukraine, guys. Another terrible tragedy there. Moving away from war-torn stories, guys, which I think is a good thing to do. Reuters have reporting that South Korea has unveiled a $23 billion support package for chips amid the US tariff uncertainty from Reuters. $23 billion. That's a huge amount of money that South Korea have poured in from their own government into the support of this. So obviously, as you guys know, the Trump tariffs, even though they have been reduced and certain items have been exempt, still many nations don't know what Donald Trump is going to do next. And because we don't know what's going to happen next, need to take precautions, and that's what South Korea are doing here in terms of their own industries, protecting themselves from these Trump tariffs there. I just read that the measure comes as a response to calls on the government to expand support at a time of growing policy uncertainty under the current US administration and rising competition from Chinese rivals, the government said in a statement. Yeah, well, of course. Well, you obviously Taiwan and their semiconductors and their manufacturing there, as well as China rising there. So, and the fact that this the Trump tariffs are obviously having an impact on them, need to protect their own industries there. So 23 point. So their country's vital semiconductor industry is worth up to 33 trillion. About a quarter from 26 trillion. One package unveiled last year. So it's a huge industry in South Korea there. In that story there. South Korea's decision to pump more money into the key chip sector is designed to help companies cope with heavier costs as they compete globally, it says. So that's quite an interesting one there. I wanted to share with you guys there. One other story before we actually go to the newses, and we'll have a look at the newses as well. Some of you guys have heard this story already. I'm going to bring up the article here so that I've got it in front of me as well. Excuse me. And that is what's happening in America. Harvard University defies Donald Trump's demands and is facing the $2.3 billion in funding cuts. The Ivy League school becomes the first U.S. university to defy Trump administration demands after pro-Palestinian campus protests. So, as you guys know, the Trump administration wants to suppress anyone criticizing Israel or any kind of support for Palestine, not just Hamas, but anyone who supports Palestine in any way, shape, or form. And Harvard have been the ones that have been the most defiant in all this, allowing the rights for students to be able to peacefully protest and however they want. And Donald Trump, as you know, is trying to crack down on this in the education areas to try and stop people talking about it, just try and stop anybody supporting Palestinian people in their rights in any way. And this is quite, it's extraordinary. A part of me does feel that Harvard may be forced to U-turn on this to try and I admire their defiance on this, but losing $2.3 billion in funding cuts over this, I don't know if Harvard will be able to cope with this. I don't know if they'll be able to handle this, this defiant order. So I'll read just a bit into it for you. So they rejected demands from the US President Donald Trump's administration that would see the university seize control of what it describes as a conservative government that portrays universities as a dangerously leftist. Within hours of Harvard taking its stand on Monday, the Trump administration announced it was freezing $2.3 billion of federal funding to the Ivy League school. The funding freeze comes after Trump's administration said last month it was reviewing £9 billion in federal contract grants to Harvard as part of a crackdown on what it says is anti-Semitism that erupted on college campus during pro-Palestinian and anti-Gaza war protests over the past 18 months. The freeze follows Harvard's president Alan Garbar's issuing a public letter calling the Trump administration's demands an attempt to control the Harvard community and threaten the school's values as a private institution devoted to the pursuit, production, and dissemination of knowledge. Rejecting the government's demands, which include reporting foreign students for co-violations, reforming its governance and leadership, discontinuation of its diversity, equality and inclusions, that's the DEI program, as well as changing its hiring and administration policies, especially for international students. Garber said such interference was unprecedented and beyond the powers of the federal government. And he says our last bit on it, no government, regardless of which is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, who they admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry that they can pursue. Garber's letter continued. I admire what they're doing. I really, really do. I just think they're going to buckle under the pressure. I really think they will. I want them to succeed. I really do, guys. I really want them to succeed. And I want them to continue to hold this stance. But I will not be surprised if in the end of it all they do back down. And just a reminder, Columbia University was stripped of £400 million in grants and contracts on March the 7th for what the Trump administration alleged was allowing relentless violence, intimidation, and anti-Semitism harassment on the campus. That was Columbia University. That was back in March as well. Deportation proceedings have begun against several detained foreign students who took part in pro-Palestinian demonstrations, while visas for hundreds of other students have also been cancelled. Yeah. So if you're anybody who, like I said, I've mentioned this before, but if you are somebody in America that is not a US citizen, you are a foreign student, and you are taking part in these protests, you can easily be deported. I've said that before, and I've said this again. Thank you so much, Alistair Keir, for the £5 super chat. Funds the flow. Appreciation for the work you do. Thank you, Alistair Keir. Greatly appreciate it. And Stephen Wong with another $5 New Zealand dollars. Thank you guys so much. All the money from today goes towards the Democratic Penguins Republic. So it all goes towards the war chest for the Democratic Penguins Republic campaign against Donald Trump. So any super chats goes towards that funding, guys. Goes towards Pingu and McDonald's Island and their battle against the Trump administration. So that war chest, the war chest is greatly appreciated. It helps them defend them against that, guys. Right. So we have a look at some of the papers, guys. Let's have a look at some papers. I'm so used to hearing that from Graham Hughes there. And yes, I do have a pen in my ear. I'm so used to having a pen in my ear when I worked. Right, let's start from CNN, guys. I'm going to set... let me make sure I've got this set up right. Oh, look, I'm up here. Yeah, I've put myself up here, guys, because I think it'd be a bit easier for you guys to see the news because of the way the websites are. Obviously, I'll try and read out some of the news. So this is obviously... I've got it on the world news here for CNN. So, extended heat waves in India, Pakistan to test survivability limits with temperatures reaching Death Valley levels. I remember I think it was last year, actually, we talked about the temperatures in India reached soaring heights in India. I think I even did a video about this. It was brutal. They were brutal heat waves that they're going through. Let's just have a quick look at what the temperatures they're reaching up there. Heat waves, 49 degrees Celsius. 49. That's brutal. That is brutal. Maximum temperatures in capital Delhi, a city more than 60 million people, have already crossed 40 degrees Celsius, 104 Fahrenheit, at least 3 times this month, up to 5 degrees above the seasonal average, the meteorological department has said. Oh my god. The maximum recorded temperatures in parts of Rajasthan reached 44 degrees Celsius. Jesus. That's brutal. That is absolutely brutal for them. That's brutal. My god. Sudan's RSF camp claims control of major Darfur camps. Civilians flee. As I said, that conflict is still going on. Ecuador's president, Daniel Noboa, declared election winner as rivals demands a recount. Oh, dear. Ecuador's president, Daniel Noboa, won the... I know the text is a bit small. I do apologise. Won the presidential election on Sunday based on preliminary results, the election official said, as his main rival demanded a recount of the vote following a race overshadowed by drug-fueled violence that has consumed the once peaceful South American country. Noboa, a conservative, has made fighting crime, economic and revitalization two of his main goals. Summed up in the slogan New Ecuador, as he faces, among other challenges, violence by criminal groups and an energy crisis that has caused constant blackouts in the country. With 9% of the bailouts counted, the trend is favour in Noboa is irreversible and he is considered the winner, National Election Council President Dania Ahmed had told a press conference on Sunday. Leftist lawyer Lucia Gonzalez said she rejects the results and demanded a recount. I don't know too much about Ecuadorian politics, so I can't speak too much on this, but I hope it was free and fair. On that matter is all I can possibly say. I really hope it was, guys. I really, really hope it was. Thank you so much, Stephen Banker, for the £5 super chat. Here's a wee bit for Ollie because that Pingu is dragging him along. Keep up the good work. Yeah, thank you, Stephen Banker. And Pingu and Ollie and the gang will very much appreciate the support. Thank you guys today. Appreciate it. This should be called Regan's Paper Rounds. Well, it's not papers. That's the reason. The reason I don't call it papers is because we're not looking at papers. We're looking at, because the papers would be just the front page headlines, which you get from the Scottish headlines from Dave McGuinness there, in the morning paper review, and you also get them from Graham Hughes's on Politics Social. Whereas for me, I'm showing you what the news is, what the websites are saying, what the news you're hearing here and now. So I wasn't really sure what to call it. So yeah, and it's obviously this is one of the first shows where I've not called it Snowflake as well, guys, because everything was always Snowflake. Let's see what else is there. Gabon's coup leader wins presidency in the first election since military takeover. Marco Vargas Lucia, Nobel Peace winner, author, dies at 89. Israel strike leaves Gaza City. Last fully functioning hospital out of service as offensive escalates. I'm pretty sure I covered that on Rumble, if that not today, yesterday. Brazil's Jair Bolsonaro hospitalised with abdominal pain related to old stab wound. I've got that in a short video dropping. We talked about Hungary's constitutional crisis there. Up to 400,000 displaced from Darfur camp as Sudan's RSF takeover, UN agency says. Russia strikes on Ukrainian city of Sumy, kills 35 in the deadliest attack this year. Where's the condemnation for that from the Trump administration? There isn't. What we know about the Dominion nightclub collapse and its victims. Yeah, that's a story that I've heard for about quite a while. It's quite a terrible tragedy that took place in there. I wish it was not showing that clip there. I do apologise if you're seeing the that explosion on the side. I wish CNN was not airing that. I do apologise, guys. 1 second. Right, let's have a look. What's Al Jazeera having here? Oh no, I was supposed to go to the main page. Let's have a look at the main page. Israel demands that Hamas disarm unacceptable as Gaza kills nearly 51,000. Reports are it's going to be up to 80,000 if not more deaths. Ignore that number. It's much, much higher. Remember, whenever you see the numbers of people who are dead within Gaza, it's you have to add at least another 20,000-30,000 guys. I'm sad to say this simply because they don't count for the amount of bodies that haven't been found, and there's been a lot that's been unaccounted for, and that's only what the Palestinian authorities have been able to report on that. Sudan's war to enter the third year as RFF assaults in Darfur intensifies. And can China use US debt in its tariff war against the US? Lebanese Prime Minister visits Syria's president to reset years of strained relations. That's very good. That's a very good sign there. US attack on Yemen killed 123 people since mid-March. Health authorities there. Trump moves to put tariffs on chips and drugs. Floats pause on audio duties. Islamabad seeks answers after 8 Palestinians shot dead in Iran. Opinion pieces there. One opinion piece. Is it time Libya enacts legislation banning FGM? The global economy is in turmoil. Now is the time to build a new order, says Ben Radley there. And obviously Hamas studying Israeli ceasefire, which we talked about in Harvard University there. That is there from Al Jazeera. Let me just make sure it's on the right one. This is African news, guys. Let me just take it back to the main page. So African news is one that I tend to use for news from Africa, hence the name. But sometimes sometimes I find better news outside of them, believe it or not. Sometimes even the BBC sometimes has interesting news here. Their main story they've got on the front page is scores killed in an attack by gunmen in central Nigeria there. They have new bulletin on the side. I'll come to some of them in a moment. I know you can't see it because the text is really small. On the left here, why is it? I didn't really check it. Hold on, let me see if I can fix. Oh, I see. Now I know why it's like that. Okay. I'll have to fix that next time round. Maduro's ex-finance minister released on bail after corruption charges there. Gabon's reacts to Bruce Ondlo's Nomala's landslide presidential victory. That's in Gabon. I think we saw that somewhere already. And Sudan's World Food Programme warns of hunger crisis and asks for more funding. We mentioned that already. South Africa appoints a special US envoy after its ambassador was expelled. And then some of the news just in on the right-hand side there. I know the text is small, but I'll read a couple of out for you. So Meta faces antitrust trial over Instagram and WhatsApp accusations. Let's have a quick nose what this one is. A historic antitrust trial kicked off Monday in Washington, placing Meta CEO Zuckerberg in the courtroom spotlight. U.S. Federal Trade Commission aims to force the tech giant to divest Instagram and WhatsApp, two startups it acquired over a decade ago, and is now dominating social media landscape. Zuckerberg and other top Meta executives are expected to testify as the trial unfolds in what could be a defining moment for tech regulation in the US. So they don't just for reference, they don't just do Africa news, they do all sorts of news just for reference there, guys. To see what else, if got any other interesting news. Ethiopia, Tigray struggles for care for war and the wounded there. US and Iran set to continue nuclear talks in Rome on Saturday. I think that's an old one there. EU foreign ministers discuss Ukraine, Syria, and EU-Africa relations in Luxembourg there. So that's a couple of the news there from Africa. Let's see what... This is Euro news. So Trump claims to have solved US inflation amid market turmoil. Okay, sure. Sure, Donny, sure. Ukrainians mourn the victims of Russian attack on Sumy. Is Frederick Merz more popular in Brussels than in Berlin? France united front against a mystical score deal starts to show cracks. And then they got under pain of climate changes was clear in Europe last year, says experts. See what else they've got. EU and the European Union announces 1.6 billion euros financial aid package for the Palestinian authorities. Notice it's Palestinian authorities and not for what's happening in Gaza. Interesting. Peru and legitimate mourns the death of scribe Marco Valles Lucidia. The EU secures 2/3 of 5 billion ammunition goal for Ukraine there. Greece strengthens its military with 16 anti-ship missiles from France. At least 7 killed in a suspected US airstrike in Yemen. Trump considers pulling also tariffs as world economy endures a whiplash. Hungary passing the amendment on the LGBT. We talked about that already. At least 9 people injured in Australia overnight Russian attacks there. So those are some of the stories there from Euro News. One outlet that I go to very often, which is very, very reliable. I do highly recommend them. Highly recommend them. The Associated Press, guys. So El Salvador's President Bukele said he won't be releasing a Maryland man back to the US. Female sergeant becomes the first woman to compete in the grueling Army Ranger contest. More coverage on this. It says Trump says he wants to imprison US citizens in El Salvador. That's likely illegal. It is, for reference. The Harvard campus we talked about already. US Army to control land on Mexico. US Army to control land on Mexico border as part of base. Migrants could be deterred, officials say. Is that with or without the... Do you have a... Control land on Mexico border. Along silver federal land along the US medical border that President Donald Trump is turning over to the Department of Defense would be controlled by the Army as part of a base, which could allow troops to detain any trespassers, including migrants, US officials told the Associated Press. Transfer of that border zone to military control makes it part of an Army installation. It's an attempt by the Trump administration to get around a federal law that prohibits US troops from being used in domestic law enforcement in American soil. But if the troops are providing security for that land as part of an army base, they can perform that function. However, at least one presidential powers expert says the move is likely to be challenged in the courts. Well, they're going to get challenged in the courts one way, shape, or form there. They're going to get challenged in the courts one way, shape, or form. I don't see that's going to. They're going to get challenged in the courts. What else they've got here? Trump considers pausing his auto tariffs as the world endures whiplash. Confusion reigns over Trump's exempt electronics from the tariff regime. Nvidia plans to manufacture AI chips in the US for the first time. Oh, well, that's a good thing, I suppose. Tehran says next round of US-Iran nuclear talks in Oman after Rome named by officials. Officials work to uncover the motive for fire set at Pennsylvania governor's residence. On the right-hand side, Hong Kong defends its immigration procedures after British MP was denied entry. We talked about that yesterday. Despite a court order, White House bars MPs from Oval Office event. Study finds people are obtaining abortions, but fewer are travelling to other states for it. I was going to say it's a loophole to put troops on US soil. Yeah, that's exactly it, Kia. Yeah, thanks for clarifying. Pretty sure they'll look for some kind of loophole. But anything to justify doing what they're doing when they know they shouldn't be doing it. Vance fumbles the Ohio State NCAA football championship trophy as Buckeyes visit the White House. I saw that clip. That was brilliant. That was just brilliant. It was just like typical of this Trump administration. It's just embarrassing. Wisconsin clerk who failed to count almost 200 ballots resigned amid internal investigation. Elephants of San Diego Safari Park huddle to protect calves during an earthquake. And there's loads of news from the Associated Press. I do recommend using them whenever you want to check out some news there. Just keeping an eye on the time. We've got about just roughly 8 minutes. This is from Reteras, guys. They can be nitpicky sometimes whenever I use them. That's why I don't use them as much as I used to. Because at one point they basically said that if I didn't accept cookies, they wouldn't allow me to use their website, basically. And I said no. But it appears that I'm okay at the moment. China's murky bankruptcy exposed hazardous for foreign investors is their main story they've got at the moment. And I talked about that. South Korea unveils £23 billion support package for chips amid the US tariff uncertainty, because we don't know at the moment. Of course, that can change later on today. Trump administration sued over tariffs in US Court of International Trade. US stepped up probes into pharmaceutical chip imports, setting stage for tariffs. Techs also share as Trump floats more tariff exemptions amid confusion. And there's some of the market share stories they've got there as well. Jamie Dimon sells about 31.5 million's worth of JP Morgan shares there. Judge orders the Bank of America to pay $540 million in the FDIC lawsuit. UK labour market shows slowdown signs in a run-up to employers' tax hike. And the exclusive they've got there in that Nissan is to cut Japanese production of the top-selling US model due to the tariffs. So, yay, tariffs, guys. They're doing really, really well there. British Steel, obviously, there. We talked about that yesterday. Oil prices dropped to turn up heat on the emerging markets, crude exporters there. A couple more other stories here. Venezuelans tackled by federal agents in dramatic courthouse arrest in February. Suspect in Pennsylvania Governor Manchin fired harbor hatred for Shapiro. Ben Shapiro, I'm assuming that is. Harvard, we talked about that story already. Another Colombian student arrested by US immigration officials. And then there's a couple of other stories here, so any worth pointing out for you guys. Singapore dissolves parliament ahead of immediate election. Singapore got their election there. Trump administration moves to scrap Biden-era credit card late fee rule. Europe has the most widespread floods for more than a decade in 2024, scientists say. China officials said US tariffs aim to take away Hong Kong's life, apparently. Ghana orders foreigners to exit gold market by April the 30th there. Trump administration wants to nearly half the State Department's budget. Some of these stories are not good. Got less than 5 minutes. I let's go to the New York Times. I think we'll probably leave the Kiev Independent. We'll probably just go to this one. So New York Times. I can't open these guys because if I do, they'll ask me for a pay. Ask me to get to subscribe and whatnot. So I won't be able to open any of these guys. So we'll just have to see the front of these. So this is New York Times today. The United States to freeze $2.2 billion for Harvard, which we talked about already. Inside Trump's pressure campaign on universities. 13 unforgettable looks at Coach Yana. There. US and El Salvador rope return man who was wrongly deported. Colombia activist arrested by ICE at his appointment for citizenship. Wow. Moscan Masserini, a legal permanent resident, has lived in the US for 10 years and was arrested in Vermont. He has not been charged with a crime. Wow. He had an appointment for citizenship and he was arrested. That's so outrageous. That is so outrageous. That is just so fucking outrageous. I had to swear. Like, come on. His appointment for citizenship and they arrested him. Absolutely disgusting. Stephen Moore, thank you so much for the 5 New Zealand dollars. You, Alistair Keir, Stephen Baker have been very generous today, going towards the Democratic Penguin Republic funds, helping the Penguins in their cause against the Trump tariffs. They will greatly appreciate your support. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate it. As Trump makes his case, he turns to the Oval Office set piece. Court temporary blocks Trump's stuttering of migrant entry program. Yeah, they'll just probably ignore it. The US trade war with China could be good for India. Is it ready? Apparently. Excuse me. Haiti's gangs have evolved. The United States will pay the price. I'm a member of Denmark's parliament. My country is a steward, a US ally. Well, yeah, you might consider that, but the Trump administration sees you differently there. White House asked Congress to claw back funding from NPR and NPS there. Airport was repeatedly warned on bird strikes before deadly South Korea crash. Yeah, guys, another terrible plane crash. Lives lost. Operators at the airport at Judo Air flight crashed in December, killing 179. Failed to meet guidelines intended to prevent such strikes. We can say that part of it is related to the cutback of the aviation industry as well. We can say that's been part of it as well. White House released results of Trump's annual physical exam. We do not want to talk about that. I've done it in a short video as well. Steel industry, we talked about already yesterday. Trump describes Russia's deadly strike on Ukraine city as horrible, but won't call out Russia for it. Anything else here? Teachers worried about students using AI, but they love it for themselves. Educators are increasingly using generated AI in their own work, even as they express profound hesitation about the ethics of student uses. It's to make work easier for them. Zuckerberg takes a stance to defend Meta against antitrust suit. And quite a lot more stories there. I'm just going to stop there, guys, because we have ran out of time. Yes, so Morning Brew will be starting on Politics Social in about 1 minute's time. But thank you guys all for coming along. I will be back later on at 6 p.m. for the Snowflake Corner. Some interesting stories that we covered here today. Some interesting world news ones. They're definitely a bit different to what I normally do. But we'll be coming back tomorrow morning looking at some of the other news. Like I said, if there's any other specific outlets you want me to cover specifically, whether it's in the UK or abroad, drop them down in the comments or in the live chat. Not in the comments down below after the live stream. That'll be much easier for me to check out there. And I will look to add them to the slots there, and we'll have a look at it whether it's UK based or world based. Drop them down in below and we'll cover them, because I'd like to potentially get you guys a bit more inclusive in this as well, so we can look at them together. But thank you guys so much for the super chats. Steve McMahon, Alistair Keir and Stephen Banker, thank you guys for the super chat. Penguin and the Democratic Republic of Penguin, I want to say thank you very much for your support. It is greatly appreciated. Enjoy the rest of your day, whatever you guys got planned. I do have content to do, but I also have some wrestling content I need to do as well. So, but yeah, like I said, I might go for a bike ride today. I may do, I may not. But thanks everyone for watching, and take care of yourselves. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. And hopefully I will see you later on tonight at 6 p.m. Take care, everyone.